book is the alcohol. You know, why is it acceptable for me as a healthcare practitioner to be at work with everybody and go, you know what, it's been a rough day, I'm going to go have a couple of beers? And alcohol has been shown to be just so devastating to the body. You know, you have angry drunks, I mean, all this stuff. And, you know, but at the same time, I can't go, you know what, I'm going to go home and smoke a joint, and it's going to relax me, and I'm going to stay at home. I'm not going to get into any trouble. I might eat a little bit. I mean, it's a huge double standard based on the lies that the whole war on drugs has been based on.
I mean, what were you going to say, Elizabeth? No, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say that I think it's really important, Andrea, what you were talking about earlier about personal experiences.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can talk about personal experiences all day long. Until people have experienced something for themselves or someone close to them, it's not the same. And so we wanted patients, because we're huge patient advocates. That's what we are. We are here for our patients. That is, you know, why we went into nursing. That's why we went to nurse practitioner school. Like this is for everyday people. And we want them to understand when they do go see their provider, that their providers have not been taught in nursing school, in medical school, anything about the endocannabinoid system, how cannabis affects, you know, their bodies, all these symptoms that it can help. And so one of the reasons that we wrote this book is so that even if providers are not pro-cannabis, even if they're completely anti, hopefully we can get them to a place where they can at least be knowledgeable in this area, so that they can talk to their patients when their patients bring something up to them. Because as providers, negative things, let's say heroin.
Yeah.
Okay. We know all about how that affects the body.
Cocaine.
So that we can discuss with our patients whatever they're using, whether it's legal or not, how it affects them, how to be safe. And so we're really hoping that this book will allow people, even if they're not pro, to at least be able to broach the subject with their patients in a knowledgeable and helpful manner. And that patients and lay people, you know, will be able to understand at least most of this book, if not all of it, so that they can be their own advocate. And when they go to their provider, they can say, hey, I'm having all these issues, and I'm thinking about becoming a cannabis patient, or I already am, so that they can have that dialogue, because trust is the foundation of seeing your provider, knowing that you can let them know exactly what's going on in your life, and that you're not going to be judged, and that you can have an actual conversation about something. And that's really important to us. And we're hoping that other people who have had experiences like my husband will be able to be like, oh my God, that's what happened to me. You know, that's the negativity that I received when I went to my provider and talked to them, and say, it's okay that we're frustrated and tired of not being able to talk to our providers about what's actually going on in our lives, and that we can be advocates for ourselves and for each other and make a difference.
I wish I could get what you just said and just broadcast it everywhere. Be like, look, no, it's true. And this is actually a question I have. How is it that physicians are so well versed on heroin, cocaine, but not cannabis? When I didn't even know until I read your book that it was it was actually in the US considered part of
it was the pharmacopedia in the 1800s, and you know, it was prescribed regularly. And what ended up happening is, like we say in the book, it's basically racism and greed demonized it. The Mexican immigrants came over in the early 19 teens, and they brought marijuana with them. And so, you know, we had been using cannabis, and that's what they called it, was cannabis. And all of a sudden they saw these immigrants bringing marijuana, and they used that to demonize it. And then William Randolph Hearst, the paper mogul, he decided that it was going to cut into his profits. And so he got with Henry Anslinger, and they basically just drummed up this phony congressional hearing where they had no actual experts on it and just demonized it. And one of the direct quotes from Anslinger was, "It makes the black man feel that he's as good as the white man. They'll want to sleep with your women and rape them and things like this." And
I still can't even wrap my head around that. Like,
yeah.
and I'm just going to throw this in because you mentioned alcohol. You're going to tell me that smoking weed, and I'm going to put in a very just plain that, is going to cause that, but drinking alcohol won't. Wow, US, don't you know where your brains are at right now?
Well, you say that, and it's hysterical because if you look at the timeline from when it was actually made illegal up until current time, even in the 60s and 70s, we were having research studies that were meant to demonize cannabis, but they were still finding all these positive health effects. And so, you know, there's studies from the National Institute of Drug Safety, all these people that are actually anti-cannabis, and their results are very positive. And then in the conclusion, they skew them to talk about how, you know, this is a horrible thing and it can kill people and things like that. And so that was one of the big things when we were doing the research, is we wanted to be careful where we were getting our information, because, you know, you have all these sources, and once it's funded by like these national organizations, it's usually going to be to the negative. And so a lot of the research that we found came from places like Spain, Israel. These places are at the forefront, cutting edge. And only recently have we in the States started to catch up.
We've always been far behind. I've always said that. I'm like, we need to go elsewhere for our information.
No, absolutely. But like to what Matt is saying, I think we are struggling so much, and we live in a magical time right now. You know, more and more states are realizing how wonderful and beneficial this plant is for their communities and their patients. So we live in a wonderful time, but going from using something that grows in nature, that's accessible to everyone, no matter, you know, their background, how much money they make, to the demonization of everything, re-educating is very hard. Education is very simple, right? Straightforward, but when things are demonized and misinformation is touted by people we're supposed to listen to and trust, that re-education is very difficult. And we know we have a steep road ahead of us, but we're very, very excited. We want, you know, our ultimate goal is that every single person on the planet will have access to the medication that they need, that is healthy and, you know, can be organic. Like, how wonderful. And Matt and I are very pro integrative medicine. All medicine is amazing, and we should take Eastern and Western and we should marry them together, and we should be able to provide our patients with a platform. Anything you need, we will be able to provide you. And that's what's so important. Definitely.
And to that, actually, I think that one of the things that the anti people take from what we say is they instantly jump and they say that, oh, you're saying this is a cure-all, and we say it regularly. This is not a panacea. This is not a cure-all. This is just another tool in your belt to use. And what's amazing about cannabis is that we've found that it works so well with other things. It works with your opioids to make you need less and to reduce your chance of addiction. It works well with the chemotherapy to help kill cancer and to relieve all the symptoms that the chemotherapy chemotherapy causes. It's literally just another tool to help our patients to have the best lives that they can.
And I actually want to touch on that a little bit more. So I actually didn't know that. I mean, I know that it helps with addiction and all of that, but this was something that I've wondered a lot. And I always feel kind of uncomfortable bringing it up to doctors. I'm not trying to start a fight. This is genuinely me just curious. Yeah. How can you work with something that's not made in a lab, that's literally natural, that's coming from the ground, from earth, when we're using so many synthetic stuff to keep us quote unquote healthy? Like, how do you, because I know there's a lot of medication that can interact with certain things.
Yeah. No, it's actually a lot easier than you would think. A lot of our medications come from plants. Digoxin, we use belladonna. That's another plant. And I mean, there's all kinds of these plants that were actually the basis for our current pharmaceuticals. And so, what's that?
Even aspirin. So over-the-counter medications.
Exactly. And so, basically what you have to do is we end up looking at, the known interactions and things like that. And so in the book, we have a little section where it talks about medication interactions and what to be cautious of and how to avoid those interactions. And the funny thing is that, a lot of physicians will actually prescribe medications to their patients that they have interactions, but that's what you have to do to take care of the patient. And so what they'll tell them is kind of what we said in the book, that you either take this medication before by an hour or 2 hours after, and that helps to prevent the biggest problems that'll occur. And so it's all about risk mitigation and proper dosing. And that's the other, my other big prize horse is dosing, because most people who have used cannabis in any capacity other than medical, they used it in high school or college, and their sole purpose was, let's be honest, to get messed up. I mean, it's like they were going after beer or whatever. They wanted to get messed up and out of their head. And so when you have patients who are coming back to it later in life for medical purposes, they remember that, and they're like, oh, I didn't like how that made me feel. And so you have to walk them through it, that this is all about dosing, and the dose that you used back then was for the sole purpose of getting messed up. And so technically it was an overdose that brought about these psychoactive effects, the paranoia, all these other things that you didn't like. And so if we can dial that back into an actual therapeutic dose, people are having just phenomenal results from it.
Well, it's interesting that you're saying that, because what I instantly thought of, it's like when you're first in college, and we can all admit it, when you're 18, everyone drinks, and you drink for the first time and you go way overboard. You're not, I mean, there's some people that are, but when you're 30, I doubt that you're drinking in the same capacity. But it's the same. I think it's interesting how when you're talking about medical cannabis, people get so obsessed, like, but you can't figure out the dosing and everyone's unique. And it's like, but medication is the same way. I lived that when I was trying to get quote unquote stable with pharmaceuticals. It wasn't like they were like, here's an antidepressant, you're good. It was, no, we're going to play with the antidepressant, the antipsychotic, the mood stabilizer till we get the perfect cocktail. And it was a 6-month journey. It wasn't a month and I'm finally here. And I think people expect cannabis to be that immediate, and you're still working with something that you need to figure out how it works with you. It's not a one-size-fits-all pill.
Absolutely.
You're exactly correct.
And I think too, we believe that all cannabis is medical cannabis. No matter what the person's intention for using it for, whether it is an escape or it is to treat a specific symptom, because of how your endocannabinoid system works, it actually is benefiting you, even if you just took it to get messed up. It's relieving symptoms you may not even realize you had. And so that's important to us too, on re-education, is all cannabis use is medical use. And that it's a beautiful, wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And it's something to be celebrated and encouraged. And we're very excited to try to help people realize its potential for them.
And to that, actually, that's one of the ways that I've had the most made the most headway with physicians and other practitioners is I say, you know what, guys, let's take a step back. You're upset that this person is using recreationally for whatever because they feel that it chills them out or whatever. Okay, let's take a step back again and let's look at drinking. Why do people drink? Let's be honest. Most people do not enjoy the flavor of whatever it is they're drinking. They're drinking to get out of their headspace. And why is that acceptable when it destroys the liver and can have all these other adverse health effects when cannabis is not? And so if a person is using it to get out of their head, or they don't realize it, they don't use the words, but they're using it to treat their anxiety, their depression, their whatever. And so it's no different, and it should not be seen as any different, except that it has fewer side effects.
And that's where I feel like we need to get a conversation going. I laugh whenever I bring it up to friends. This is like my favorite answer from everyone. I'm just like, I still don't know what you mean, but okay. When they're like, but I mean, shouldn't you take a day off? I don't drink every day, and I'm still very confused as to why are you comparing cannabis and alcohol? First of all, I can right now smoke a joint and do my taxes.
Yeah.
Full on,
Well,
and you can check them and they're good.
I can totally give you the answer to that right now. The reason it's different is because of your endocannabinoid system. Most people, have a normally functioning endocannabinoid system. And so like with vitamin D or vitamin C or any of those, if you're functioning normally, you don't have to supplement. The supplementation has to occur when you start to have abnormal functioning. And so that would be like your depression, your anxiety. And so what ends up happening is the body produces endocannabinoids on demand. And so if you're in a high stress state, a highly anxious state, you're burning through those endocannabinoids faster than your body can make them. And so you need to supplement it. And so it basically, it shows the medicinal effect of cannabis, that you don't need to necessarily take that day off because it is truly something that your body needs as opposed to alcohol.
Oh my God. Wait, I love how you just compared it to vitamin C and D because it's something so tangible. There's certain people that, I mean, I don't know if it's scientific research. Maybe this is just something I've heard all my life. But if you're Hispanic, or darker skin, for some reason, you tend to be deficient in vitamin D.
I don't know that I've heard that necessarily, but there's certain, like for example, in Albuquerque where we are, we're at the wrong elevation and longitude to properly absorb vitamin D.
Really?
And so the vast majority of my patients in the clinic actually have a vitamin D deficiency.
That's so interesting. I didn't know that played a role.
Andrea,
By the way, I lived in Albuquerque before moving to Colorado. So it was interesting, like, didn't ever think about that. Wait, so sorry, Elizabeth, I know you're going to say something, but this just like popped into my mind. So would you say that if there's certain places everywhere where you can be prone to more deficiencies just based on where you're living, then that area there's more of a chance that you're going to be accessible to depression and different things because of that deficiency?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you think about seasonal depression, for people that live in Alaska or Norway or, places that have like months of darkness in the winter time, I mean, that's a huge thing. And that does increase those things. So like Matt was talking about, and like you were talking about, do you need to take it every day? And so one of our big teaching points is, if you were on a cholesterol medication, you would take it at the same time every day, or you would try. okay? Or your anti-anxiety medication or your birth control, right? You would take it every day at the same time. And that's so important for cannabis, and people don't realize that. And so we talk to our patients all the time. You need to treat this as a medication and taking consistently at the same time every day. For those that are in an environment where they're not comfortable doing that, then take your CBD tincture with you. You know, if you found the right dosage for you, but you feel like you need to do it every 4 hours and there's no way you can do that while you're at work, then take your CBD tincture with you. You know, there's an amazing CBD company, and they make breath strips with CBD that you can just place on your tongue. So do something like that so that you're getting that consistent medication, and it will make a huge difference.
The actual medical phenomenon is called steady state. And basically the idea is that you have the drug that you're taking has a half-life. And so you want to keep the therapeutic level of the drug in your bloodstream at a certain level. And so that's why, you know, some medication you take once a day, some medication you take 4 times a day. And it's the same principle. And so what they find is that with people who especially are new users, the first time they use, the body's like, I don't know what to do with this. And so that's what causes the huge high where they're having those psychoactive effects. And so like other things, when they start getting it at a steady state and they reach that level and the body's like, oh, I'm going to keep getting this, then it starts using it for the therapeutic effects that it needs to use it.
Okay, so wow, that's such an interesting thing. So you would be saying there's kind of like a curve where your body's getting used to it, and once you hit that plateau foundation, you're able to, like, it's actually benefiting you on the therapeutic level.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be.
And I mean, that's not to say that these first time users are not getting the therapeutic effect, because they probably are. They just don't realize it because they've never had that high effect, I guess. And I think that's the funny thing too, is that the high is so different than what people think it is. You know, they think they're going to wander around and see multicolored mushrooms popping out of the ground and stuff. And, you know, I tell people that basically what it is it's more of a calming, slowing, so you can deal with things. You know, it makes it so that, you know, you can actually think through things calmly. You're not having that emotional response. You're not, you know,
in that fight or flight constantly.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I started using cannabis. I tried it for the first time when I was 18. And I remember that I was just like, nope, not for me. I was looking for something that made me high strung, not relaxed. I lived in a very traumatic state. So for me, alcohol gave me that, versus cannabis. I'm like, I don't like this relaxed sensation of slowness. No. And didn't try it again till I was a freshman in college. I was not diagnosed yet, and I was literally bouncing off the walls of mania and depression, but didn't know how to vocalize it because it wasn't an extreme where I'm like, oh, something's wrong. It was more of like, sometimes I don't want to get out of bed, but then I don't sleep for a week. This is kind of cool, I guess. And I remember that I consumed it for the first time because someone was like, maybe this will help you sleep. And I did. And then I never had that same experience again, but it was also, I was in a different state.
Yeah.
I completely stopped again after I went on pharmaceuticals. And then when I got off pharmaceuticals, everyone was starting to talk, well, not everyone, but people were starting to talk about it. And I remember I brought it up to my psychologist at the time, and it was a very, okay, why do you want to do this? All right, let's talk about this. Not let me shame you with my beliefs on how it's supposed to be. And one of the biggest things I get from people, how do I start that dialogue? How do I create this space where I can have this conversation with my physician, and it's not that I'm hiding something, because I hear it all the time. I go to the doctor, or, you know, I remember when I first moved to Colorado, which I don't even know why I worried so much. I'm like, it's been legal here, recreational and medicinally, but for some reason that stigma. And
Yeah.
I was in the hospital, my liver, I have liver issues from all the years of medication. And it was just, I wasn't processing anything. So I ended up going to the emergency in the middle of the night. And they were asking me, hey, is there anything that you're on? And the only thing I said was thyroid medication. And my mom was with me. And she's like, Andrea, you need to tell them. And I'm like, no, mom, because what if they are against it? Then you start to get in your head of, are they going to treat me different if they know that I consume it? Are they going to think all of these things? So I would love to know more of on your end, when you started consuming it, how you did bring it up after you had that position, was basically like, this is what you're doing and this is why you're wrong. And how to create that dialogue, even if they're not pro cannabis, even if it's just like, hey, look, you are my doctor, your job is to take care of me.
So I think for me, I would say, like I was saying earlier, you have to be your own advocate. And that's very disconcerting because a lot of patients don't have the energy to be their own advocate, right? They're exhausted, they're sick, they, you know, have a mental illness that doesn't allow that of them. And so I think what I would say is find a provider. And I know that's not always an easy thing either. And when you don't feel good, doctor shopping is not something that you really want to be doing. But finding people that are open is very important. So no matter how it's brought up, if your provider does not listen to you and take the time to ask, okay, pros and cons, or this is what I've heard about it, you know, what have you heard about it? Then you need to find a new provider, because that person is not, maybe someday, you know, that person will be at a place where they can actually approach it with the open-mindedness that medical providers need to be approaching every aspect of their patient's care. But you need to look for someone else. But also know the laws in your state, so that when you have this conversation, that you know where the doctor's coming from, or your provider's coming from as well. And educate your provider. Tell them all the things that you've learned. Hey, we're a medical state, or we're not a medical state, and we talk about in the book too. There are many people getting their medication from the black market, because that's the only place that they can get it. And so that we don't shame our patients for how they're getting their medication. I do want to say though too, as a provider, it is our job to you know, not report people.
Yeah.
You know, we've had patients on, you know, heroin and cocaine, and it's a conversation. It's not you know, a call to the authorities to you know, get these people into trouble. So most likely what people's experiences have been or could be is just that, well, I don't think that would be good for you, or shaming. But just say, when you talk to them, I am coming to you because I want help with my health. And this is what I understand and know. And I would like to talk to you about it in an open way. And are you willing to do that? And, you know, I've had conversations with coworkers, as has Matt, where they were completely anti, completely against. And if you just sit down and have a real conversation about experiences, and we talk about too, research is so important, but how we get to that place where we can do these extended studies with, you know, thousands of people It starts with literally observing your patient and what they're telling you their relief has been. And that's where we need to start. And so
Exactly.
for any providers that are going to watch this, listen to what your patients have experienced. Listen to what they're saying has benefited them, and then go from there, instead of saying, well, unfortunately, we don't have enough research and evidence to prove that that is the case, and so I'm against this completely. And that happens. But don't, as patients, be discouraged, and don't, as providers, be discouraged if you're pro cannabis. Keep pushing, keep fighting, keep being your own advocate. You know, we will get to that place where it is used the way it was meant to be used, to help people.
Well, and to that as well, excuse me, I feel that, you know, the whole 80s war on drugs painted cannabis in such a bad light because it was such an easy target. And so the lies and misconceptions and prejudices that were spread through that time exists even today. And so when you have these people, you know, and you bring up, like I've had, through my clinical experience, I had several patients that brought up that they used cannabis, and my preceptor's responses were like they had told them that they were mainlining heroin. You know, I mean, that was literally the reaction. And so, you know, I had to take a step back and talk to him about it and be like, look, why is this so horrible? You know, these patients are just trying to cope. And I think that's the long and the short of it is we have been lied to for so long about this that we have to take a step back and approach it from a different point of view and make different arguments for it. And so to do that, you know, that's one of the reasons we wrote this book, is to, you know, give patients and providers alike the tools to be able to have these conversations with people. And that's one of the reasons that it was so important for us that every claim in the book is backed by research and backed by not just one paper, but multiple papers and studies. And so, you know, we have a section in the back where it's, you know, frequently asked questions and how to talk to your provider and things like that. And I think what Elizabeth said is the long and the short of it is just have a conversation. You know, this is what I've found. This is why I'm interested in this. And what are your thoughts and why? And, you know, it's really easy to write off a provider as being very anti because they don't want to do it. But we do have our own reasons as well, as we address in the book, that there are certain medications or certain mental health conditions, or pregnancy even is still you know, one of those very gray areas. And so, you know, if you actually discuss this, you might find out that it's not necessarily that they're anti, but they're concerned about some other aspect of your health.
I think that a lot of the times when you start the conversation, you realize that it's more of just misinformation, more than anything. My mom is someone that I'm in awe because she's Colombian, and based on the time that she grew up, it was very much the war on drugs. So her opinion, because she never tried it, was very, oh, this is going to make you lazy and you're not going to work and you're just going to lay in bed and watch TV all day. And my brother started consuming when he was in high school, and I laugh back because now that we talk about it, she starts to think about it and she's like, you know what? He was doing good in school. He was playing football and like he was doing good. I don't know why I was making such a big deal out of this, but I wasn't making a big deal about the fact that he was going out on the weekends and going to clubs and drinking because we grew up in Panama. But I was on the fact that he was consuming cannabis. And now she does research and she'll send me like an article. She's like, look what I found. And it's so interesting because she did start to really get informed. And I also was like, Mom, watch how I act. You think that it's what the show on TV is showing. And I laugh when people are like, you're just going to want to fall asleep. Maybe, I mean, maybe your body's tired and maybe that's why you're falling asleep. I sometimes do, and sometimes I want to go work out. It's such a different experience every day. I mean, it can vary so much, but I also think the media is not helping by the images that they're portraying and reinforcing this narrative that you're a stoner, quote unquote.
The lazy stoner
the
stereotype.
lazy stoner stereotype. I laugh about it all the time, and I'm still, again, and if you are, and that goes back to if you're abusing heroin, you did not wake up one day and you're like, you know what? I have nothing better to do with my life. I want to be a heroin addict.
Heroin
sounds like fun, right? Like no one wakes up thinking like that. I'm sure that you started off with something else and you ended there, but it's because you're trying to escape something.
That's it. The thing you have to step back and say is why?
Yeah.
Why did they start this? Not because shame on them for doing it, but what drove them down this path to seek something harder and harder? You know, there's something that they're trying to treat, and that's what happens so often. You know, these people who are going through 30 packs of beer a day, you know, they're trying to treat something and they don't know how to verbalize exactly what it is. And so you need to have that conversation with your patients about not shame on you for using this substance, but why are you using this substance?
Andrea, I think I was going to comment too on what you were saying about, you know, not just how people perceive people that use cannabis, but not only is dosing super important, strain is super important. Knowing what strains work for you when is super important. Like for sleep, if you're taking it in the evenings to sleep, you know, in general, indicas can work better, but some people have the opposite effect. Some people have to use sativa to sleep.
True.
So part of that, learning yourself. This is a journey about yourself, how your body responds to things, what you need, when you need it. And I wish it was something that was cut and dry. You know, this is the perfect dose for you. This is the perfect strain for you. It's not like that, but don't be discouraged. So, you know, keep a journal. It's so important to keep a journal. This is how I was feeling before. This is when I took it. This is when, you know, I started feeling the effect.
How much you took.
Yeah, and how much you took in the strain type. So then you can go back and can be like, oh, indicas don't help me sleep. They make me more alert and awake and want to work or write or paint. And so sativa actually works better for me for that
relaxing. Which is actually very common with ADHD people.
Hello, me. I laugh all the time. My brother and I are completely different with our consumption. He's very much, I want to consume when I am done with my day, and loves the heavy body indica stuff. For him, sativa totally gets him in his head and paranoid. For me, though, I mean, I have put boundaries with my consumption. 2020, the working from home really kind of knocked everything out. But I always say when people tell me, I'm like, I don't view things strictly on sativa and indica. My body does not respond the typical way that people think it does. I have to go into the terpenes. Yeah, exactly. So I literally have to go into the terpenes. So it's funny when I go to a dispensary, I can always tell when the bud tender is new in the industry and they have no idea what they're talking about, because I'm like, wait, can you tell me about the terpenes? Well, it's indica. And I'm like, that's not what I asked.
Well, so it's really funny that you bring up the terpenes, because here in Albuquerque, the terpenes are the huge push. Everybody's all about the terpenes. And here's the problem, though, is that they're pushing the terpenes as the medicine of the plant.
Ah, okay.
And so I regularly have to tell people the terpenes aren't the medicine. The terpenes guide the effects of the medicine.
I like that guy.
And so if you think about it, if the terpenes were the medicine, you could literally walk across the street to your supermarket, buy a mango and chomp on it and have the same effects.
You can do that with lavender too and think that's you're gonna get. Yeah.
Exactly. But it's not the true medicine. It does have those medicinal effects. We know that the aromatherapy and things like that have their effects, but it's truly just a guide for the cannabinoids, and it kind of guides them into the effects that they're going to have for you.
It's interesting. I'm going to touch on a little bit of what Elizabeth said because it like sparked something. I feel like instead of viewing it as a hardship that I have to do all of this I was going to like all this is exploratory. Oh man, I'm totally mumbling my words now.
It's okay.
But
Self-exploration?
Yeah, self-exploration. There you go. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I feel like, at least, and I could be totally off, from what I'm getting from your message, you're really wanting to get patients to get empowered instead of I am dependent on you. And that was my biggest thing. I always go back to, I was in a really, and I say messed up place when I got diagnosed, and a physician literally said, oh yes, this, you have to be this. And I took that label and it was like, this is what I am. That is it. When I started to move away from this is what I am and really dive deeper, well, why was I acting this way? And really get to the bottom of it, I started to realize I put the doctor on this pedestal. Like, you were going to give me all of the answers, and anything that you didn't approve was wrong. So when my mom brought up, hey, why don't we try alternative stuff? I was so against it because I'm like, no, the doctor said that is bad and this is good. But it wasn't until, and you said that experience of when you are literally experiencing something on your own or someone close to you, that's when you start rethinking things, that they had no other options. And they were very much like, look, she is more psychotic than she is actually lucid. Long-term care facilities, all that we can really recommend. The antipsychotics are not working for her. It's like you're giving her sugar candy because she's still hallucinating. And that was the biggest thing for me. When I finally got to that point, it was like, you know what? The reality is I've been putting you on a pedestal for the last 10 years of my life. And it's not because you're doing it on purpose, but you don't know any better because you're reading off of a book how to help me. And so, I don't even know what's going on with me. So how can you know? And when I started to, that self-exploration phase with cannabis really connected me with myself, and not, I need someone to tell me what works for me and what doesn't. So I feel like the fact that you can't just go to a doctor and a doctor's going to tell you, well, you need to take, you know what? You should take 0.5 milligrams, and then you should take 2. When you can't have that from a doctor and you have to do it yourself, it should give you this empowerment of, oh my God, I can heal myself. Not, oh my God, I need you to heal me.
So to that, I can't speak for Elizabeth on this, but as a provider, I don't view myself as the end all be all. I am, my goal is to help you be the best you. And to do that, when I have a patient come in, I'll be the first to admit, I don't know everything. There's so much to not know. How could I know everything? And so, you're talking to your patient and they're going through their symptoms and that sort of thing. And you go down the list of what can it be? Okay, I think it's going to be this. So we need to run some tests. And to treat this, these are our treatment options. And so usually what I'll do is I'll go down the pros and the cons of all the treatments and say, what would you like to do? Because really and truly, I'm not giving orders about your life. I'm trying to help you live the best life that you can and have the healthiest life that you can.
I wish we could have all of you. Can we copy you and just stick you in every doctor's office and be like, here, talk to him before you go in there?
Andrea, I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing that story.
Oh,
yes, definitely.
And I mean, that means so much to me that you are sharing something that was very traumatic for you, I'm sure. and the progress that you've made and how far you've come. And that's beautiful. And I'm so happy, for you. And I hope that, everyone can learn from your story, because even if it's not identical, even if they're not dealing specifically with being bipolar, it could be a plethora of things that they're dealing with. You are beautiful and special and important. Okay. And we want everyone to use us as tools. We are part of your team. Okay. We're not up here. We are human beings that have had experiences, and we want to share what we've learned from those experiences and from our education, and then to gift those experiences to our patients, because that's what this is all about. At the end of the day, it is about our patients' quality of life, period. And to be able to support them and lift them up and help to guide them. And so I know Matt feels the same way. It breaks our hearts to know that so many people out there are scared to go to the doctor. They're scared to go to the hospital. They've had bad experiences. And we don't want it to be like that. We want it to be I get to go see my team member, my partner, who is going to help me fight whatever I'm dealing with. And that I'm hoping someday, especially in this country, that we can come to that place where we can have honest discussions with people in a manner that they understand, and not just speak, medical speak that is so, above and beyond, but actually coming in and saying, this is what I'm seeing as a provider, but you tell me your experience. And that when someone says, and like I said, we're very integrative medicine. We believe wholeheartedly that there are pharmaceuticals that help people every day and that are amazing and wonderful, but they're not the end all be all. So that people can say, I don't want to take this anymore. I stopped taking this. And instead of shaming them, why not? How did it make you feel? What were the things that you didn't like about it? One of the important things in medicine is the pros and the cons, right? Okay, this does have some cons, but the benefit is so much greater that we're willing to risk those negative outcomes because of the potential for it being so great and so helpful. And, Matt was talking about all our research for the book, and that an important thing in research is who funded it, who participated in it, what's the driving force behind it, so that you can say, oh, I don't think those people really wanted to find out the truth about this study.
Oh, yeah.
But that for the book, we used all the research. We did not want this book to be something that if someone was anti or against, that they would be like, oh, they only use studies and research that was pro-cannabis, and so they cannot be trusted. No, we want this to be accessible to everyone so that they can say, oh, wow, there are negative effects to this. These things can happen to people. But if you approach it respectfully and with the patient's best interest at heart, it can be a beautiful and wonderful thing. That's so important. We don't want people to feel alone anymore, because we know that there are hundreds of thousands of people that feel alone and like no one's listening.
I wish I could just have you. I will say, no, Matt, you're awesome. Like your brain, the way your brain works, I'm just like, I just want to ask him questions. But Elizabeth, you're reminding me right now why I felt safe in hospitals. And it was nurses like you that literally just get from their heart. That's all. Like, I don't want to get all teary. And it's just, I think of that. I think back to when I was in the psych ward or when I was in the hospital, and it wasn't the doctors. It was always the nurses that would hold my hand and that they would tell me that it was okay. So Literally from the bottom of my heart, thank you so, so much for being so open with everything. And both of you are, it's like you guys are literally on the same team as everyone. There's no dividing. I can't say that I've seen that, especially right now where we're so divided as a country. You are not trying to say, I'm here. No, you're literally saying, let's just come together. Let's just come together. And thank you.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome. Matt and I make a good team. We've been together a long time. We've been through a lot of stuff together.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we're all human beings. That's all we are. We're just people. We're all the same. We all have family issues. We all, we all have things that can bring us together, that we can understand from each other. And for Matt and I both, people are like, well, why didn't you go to medical school? Why didn't you become a doctor? Because I don't want to be a doctor. I love being a nurse. I love it. And so now I get to be a nurse, but at a provider level, where I can diagnose and I can prescribe. And and nothing against doctors. I know some amazing, incredible people that are dear friends of mine that are doctors.
Oh, I have a lot of really good doctor friends.
One of our co-authors.
But Matt and I, that is something, and I have talked to people that, at the grocery store, before all this stuff happened with the pandemic, when you could just, hang out and talk to people. And as Matt knows, I do talk to random people all the time.
Oh, that's me.
Oh, hi, how are you?
Wait, I gotta ask real quick. What's your sun sign? This is like me really being out there.
That's so funny. I know that I'm a Cancer, but I don't know my sun sign.
Oh man, I am like picky. Okay, I've been like, literally you're the second Cancer of the day. So it's that your energy has just been like,
if you can figure out my sun sign, will you let me know?
I'm literally like, if you give me your birthday and time, I'll find it and I'll email you.
I was born on July 8th.
July 8th.
And I'm pretty sure I was born at like 3:40 in the morning.
Okay. Oh, and then you can send me the year if you don't want to say it here.
I'll send you the year.
Sounds good. Matt, what about you? Now I'm like gonna do this and totally send you guys my ring. What's up?
I'll just have her tag mine on hers.
Oh, perfect. That'll be great. I'm literally gonna email you guys back and be like, this is your entire chart.
No, that would be wonderful. I think that would be great. That's so funny. But like talking to people, and I lost my train of thought. Hold on. Talking to random people.
Well, one of the things that I firmly have based all this off of is something somebody told me a long time ago. I was a kid, and they said, Matt, folks is folks. It doesn't matter if they're rich. It doesn't matter if they're poor. At the end of the day, they all want the same sort of stuff. They want to be loved. They want to be accepted. And so if you just treat people like you would want to be treated, you're going to go a long way. And that's basically it. At the end of the day, when people are coming to see us in the clinic and they're sick, they don't care that they're a CEO or whatever. They want you to hear them. They want you to hear what's going on, and they want you to approach them with compassion as a human being. And so often we approach people so clinically and so cold, spouting off medical jargon, and nobody understands it. And so I try to simplify my language as often as I can, when discussing these things, because one of the doctors that I greatly respect and admire told me early in my nursing career that, if you can't explain it simply enough, you don't understand it well enough.
Ooh, that is
that's very true. Oh, I remembered what I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
that people that aren't even our patients, when, asking what we do or, things like that, they'd be like, oh, I have a nurse practitioner and I really like them. They seem to understand me better. And like I said, we have wonderful doctors, amazing people. But I think what's so great about nurse practitioners, especially, is that there's a connection with our patients that nurses have that providers usually don't. And so what's great about nurse practitioners is that we bring that relationship that we had with our patients as nurses into the provider aspect of that different, and doctors are getting much better now. Bedside manner is something that's actually taught now as being important. But having that connection of openness and of comfort, you want to be able to go when you don't feel well and have that comforting, supportive thing. And, you know, that's why Matt and I specifically went to nurse practitioner school, is because we wanted to carry that over into our practice.
That's so beautiful. That's so incredible. I have a question, and this is just, so Matt, can you prescribe or can you recommend?
It depends on what you're talking about. I can prescribe medications,
So you can
but
recommend cannabis.
cannabis is one of those things that it's a recommendation.
So here's,
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead.
My question is, if you do want to prescribe, you have to stop being able to now prescribe other medications. What's the why behind that? Or is that not any, I don't know. I was getting that from the book.
No. Just it's the way that it's worded for cannabis specifically. In most state laws, it's not a prescription of cannabis because cannabis is federally illegal, and so that goes directly contrary to our DEA licensing and things like that. And so basically, is if you as a provider are wanting your patient to take cannabis, you are essentially writing a letter to the state recommending this for the patient, and the state issues the card.
Okay. All right. So that explains it a little bit more. So it's because it's on a federal level, we're still on that illegal, then it goes in with the okay. I was like very intrigued. I'm like, wait, why can't they?
Yeah, that's literally what it is. Because like I can prescribe your blood pressure medication or your statin or even pain medications, you know, the narcotics, because those are all, you know, federally legal, but they're controlled, but they're federally legal. Whereas cannabis is Schedule 1. It's you know, blackballed. They say there's no medical use for it at all. So literally, to get my patient to be able to use it, I have to recommend it. It's all about the nomenclature.
What's still, and this was something that I know that a lot of people bring up. It's okay, fine. So now I am on a state level, it's legal, I'm okay. But if my job does drug tests, then I'm screwed. And this is where I get a little upset, because I go back to, and I can only speak on the medication that I took, Xanax, all of those sleeping medications. If you, and I'm just sharing my experience. And this is something that my mom, when she found out, she was like, how, to my doctor, how did you give her this? So I wasn't sleeping, and I picked up, because I'm so smart, that if I don't fall asleep right after I take my sleeping pill, I start to hallucinate. And my hallucinations were fun. I was in the circus, and I'm like, Mom, there's elephants. So I was having a ball. Of course, after a few days of this, she's like, no, go to sleep. So when she talks to my doctor about it, oh yeah, she really needs to go to sleep right after. So I find it ironic that no one's testing to see if you're on sleeping pills, which again, they're way more dangerous. No one's testing to see if you are on Xanax or on a lot of these anti-anxiety medications that are, if you use them with alcohol, very dangerous for the person and the people that they are around, because if you're driving, it can be a problem. But no one's testing you on that yet. Even if you're using it for a medicinal purpose, you can lose your job because of it. So a lot of people are on the fence of, well, should I? And if I get my med card, now it's on a state level that they're going to see it. And I say this every time. I'm like, every time I go to a dispensary, there's a paper trail of what I'm buying, versus recreationally, There's no paper trail. So a lot of people do kind of come up with, well, do I want to go the medical route? And you'll add more on this, but after reading your book and, when you start doing all this research, you realize if you don't, then you're beating the system. If you don't, like, you're going to have, it goes back to the pros and cons. Like, okay, there's a few cons, but the pros are really good. But if I continue to feed the way that they are allowing things to be done, we're never going to create change. I don't know if
Matt, can I talk about this?
I feel, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Liz was like, I have something to say.
Well, no, I was going to say that there's multiple things. There's actually some really good positives that I want to talk about first. And we talk about this in the book. There are states now where certain businesses are saying, we don't test for THC anymore. We don't think it's appropriate to test for THC. If you're not showing up to work inebriated, we don't care what you're on. If you can do your job well and safely, we don't care. They're not, doing urine drug screens on every single person when they come to work to make sure that they don't have any alcohol in their system, right? It's only if you show up to work and you're obviously impaired. So that's a positive thing, that there are more and more companies that are saying, we believe that this restricts the kind of quality employees that we have, because people don't want to even apply for a job because they're scared. And we would rather have, go ahead.
To that end, the Department of Defense has just, I was reading an article, I want to say last month, where they said that they were having very hard time finding cybersecurity people and people like that, because they were all testing positive for cannabis. So, these are the most highly qualified individuals that they can find, but they're all popping positive. And so it kind of makes you wonder, is this really worth the restrictions?
Hopefully.
So, right. So that's a positive. Okay. And we're hoping that trend will continue until that's the way it is everywhere. This is not important. Or for people that have taken opiates, I took opiates for 8.5 years for my back. And then I was able to wean myself off of it and get off of it. But I would just have to tell my employer, I have a prescription for this opiate, and then it would be fine. And so we're hoping that we can get to that place when it's federally legal, right? That you just say, look, I have a prescription, this is what I have, and that it won't be an issue. Getting it off Schedule 1 is super huge, super important, because as all of these states that are making even just medical legal, obviously it has benefit.
Yeah, they're making
obviously it's helping people. So it needs to be taken off of that. We're very hopeful that it will. But to the people that are terrified that they're going to lose their jobs, that's one of those things where it's like you'll have to come to a place where it's your health over your job. And it shouldn't have to be that way. It shouldn't. But for a lot of people, that's what they experience. And that's why Matt and I talked about, what are we going to do? Because he was literally he was at the end of his rope. He was so sick. He was in so much pain. He was so skinny. He just kept losing weight because he couldn't eat. And I know that there are many people out there that's where they got to before they were like, okay, I'm going to risk this. I'm going to do this because this might be the only thing left that can help me. And then it does help them and it's amazing, but then they can't talk about it.
Yeah.
That's where I felt like, when I was reading it, I was just like, I bet he probably wanted to scream it from the rooftops. Like, oh my God, it's all alive. But then I really can't.
But then I'd lose my job.
Yeah, that's why I was just like, I can't imagine that experience for you right then and there of, oh my God, I'm onto something, but I got to keep my mouth shut because.
Oh yeah. It was very confusing. Because, in research and in the medical education, they tell us to always question things, always ask why, always always look for reasons and rationales, and, you know, go in with an open mind. And, you know, when I actually did that and had this, you know, call it the utmost success, because that's what it was. I felt normal for the first time in years. And to have that kind of a result and not be able to discuss it was just, it was very confusing. And it was very difficult, because, you know, like you said, you get good news like that, you want to share it with everybody. And so I think that that's one of the reasons we ended up going the way we did with the book, is that we, you know, we could have self-published, we could have done all these different avenues, but we wanted the most legitimacy that we could have behind the book.
You literally do have it.
Exactly. And so, you know, Hatherley found us, and thank God. And, you know,
Seriously, guys.
Yeah.
we went out of our way to make sure that any statement we made was backed by the research, so that we'd have that extra legitimacy, you know. And that basically, it was for me, this whole thing was about changing the conversation, because we've been approaching the conversation the same way for years. Literally, if you think about any kind of cannabis conversation you've had, on the one side you have the pro, and it's always the stoner. It's either a young dude in tie-dye or an old dude that's you know, got the beard that's long as heck and long hair, and they're both kind of rambling. Or on the other side, the negative side, you have the stiff suit tie guy that, well, this is not a good thing. And they really can't tell you why, but it's, and so literally what I wanted to do was step back and go, okay, we have this conversation from this side, this conversation from this side. Let's change it. Let's figure out how we can approach it differently, and make it so that it's something that both sides can go, huh, I hadn't thought of that before.
I have to say, I definitely feel like that was what I got from the book. It was this almost, and that's why I said, I'm like, we're so divided. You guys are bringing this up, like, no, this is not about this. It's, let's just kind of take a step back and talk about what the facts are, not opinions, not objectively, this is what I know. And I honestly didn't get the name of the book until I was reading. I was like looking on Amazon and everything before I had the book. And I read the little thing that you put. I'm like, oh my God, yes, the green elephant in the room.
I'm so glad you're able to find it, and I'm so glad that it's you know, made any difference this book can make, even if it's just small, even if it's just adding something to the conversation of someone who would never have even thought about it before. But back to what you were saying about being afraid, right? This is helping me. This is making a huge difference in my life, but I can't tell anybody about it. Part of us being patient advocates is going to our local cannabis board here and putting forth petitions and saying, you know, this is what people are experiencing. These are the issues that these people are having. You know, Matt wrote an amazing petition that passed here to add neurological conditions onto our approved list. One of the things that is very near and dear to us that we are going to continue to fight for is workplace protection. No matter what job you have, whether you're working in healthcare or taking care of people or with heavy machinery, it doesn't matter. Whatever field you're in, that patients should have a safety net, and they should not be discriminated against for taking care of themselves and being healthy. We know many people who have lost their jobs because they tested positive. And it was sometimes well, if you can come back and test negative, you can totally have your job back. And that sounds kind of nice, but you're basically telling a person, you have to destroy your health to work for us.
Yep.
You
And
would
that's not
never
okay.
tell somebody to stop taking their blood pressure medication and come back in 30 days.
No.
I mean, and this is no different. It is exactly as therapeutic as that.
So, you know, we encourage everybody, find out what's going on in your state, talk to your local legislators, be a part of this amazing movement to say, no, we are being persecuted and that's not okay. We need to be supportive, and there needs to be things to keep us safe at work. And yes, that's important, but you can still take your medical cannabis and be safe at work. You know, and that's so important for people. And we know a lot of people that are in the medical field that nobody knows that they're cannabis patients.
And I so wish that they could, because then it makes it a conversation. But right now, because you guys can't disclose that, I feel like it adds to this, when what you said is true. And I think we forget about that. We're all humans, doctors included, nurses included. Just because you have a title or you went to school for something doesn't mean that you now have more knowledge than anyone else. Like, you're still just human. And yeah, it's not going into this kind of debate of, well, you can't do that because you're my doctor and you're supposed to be perfect. And it's, no, you're human. And just like I need help, so did you.
Absolutely. And starting at that grassroots, having that conversation, like you being able to talk with your mom and your brother, like that's so beautiful. Have that conversation with your partner. Have that conversation with your kids. Have
Your
that conversation,
friends.
you know, your friends. Hey, you know, I was thinking about this, or I know someone that it really helped them. What was your experience? And that's another reason we wrote the book, is so that people that have had negative experiences could be like, oh, it doesn't have to be negative.
Yeah.
You know, I have a friend who she used in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and she has severe anxiety, and it kicked her anxiety through the roof, and she started having panic attacks really bad. And she was like, I am never doing this again. And then as an adult, talking with us about things,
Mm-hmm.
she was like, oh, maybe it's a strain thing. And I'm like, well, try a different strain. And now she uses it for sleeping. And she's like, it's made a huge difference for me. So being able to share our experiences with each other, the positives and the negatives, and then be able to support that with evidence-based practice and research that says, this is why you might have had a negative experience when you took this, or you did it in this way. Let's find a way that will work best for you.
Well, and to that, you know, a lot of the naysayers like to say, you know, most of the evidence for cannabis's medical effects is all anecdotal. You know, it's this person saying it helped them this way, or that person saying it helped them that way. But let's be honest, that's how most of these research studies start. Like, for example, there's a well-known medication that we use for pulmonary hypertension. And that was the purpose of this medication, was to treat pulmonary hypertension. And so they started using this medication, and these patients would come back to their doctor about a week after they'd been taking it and say, hey, doc, it's working great. I'm breathing better, but I got a problem. I've got a hard on all the time. And that's how we found Viagra.
Wait, no way, really?
Really. That is how Viagra came to be, is through these people saying, you know, it's working great for what you said it'd work for, but I also have this going on. And so a lot of our medical advances have come that way, through patients saying something offhanded to somebody and somebody deciding to look into it. So people discounting anecdotal evidence out of hand just because it's anecdotal are people who don't understand how research truly works.
I'm so glad you shared that. I didn't know that. And it just kind of opened up even more. I'm like, wow. Like, what hasn't been, like, really? It's just, it makes you realize that everything that we truly know is all, we don't know anything. I literally say that all the time. Anytime someone's, well, how do you know? I'm like, what do we know? And people really get ticked off when I say that. But I laugh and I'm like, we thought that genes were genetic. And now we realize that there's more things that affect it. So nothing is ever set in stone. We don't know anything.
And that's so important, though, that we come to that place of, we will always be learning. Things will always be changing. And so just because something was true before, because things have changed, we need to readdress that and look at it and say, okay, is that still true? What do we need to change? But speaking about medications, pharmaceutically wise, we do off-label prescribing all the time. And we say, hey, anecdotally, right, these patients said, hey, I was on this medication for seizures, but it actually helped my anxiety too. And then we're like, maybe we should start prescribing, right, these anti-seizure medications for anxiety. We do that on a lot of things. And so by educating people and telling them, you know, this is how this system has been working and has worked, and this is how we broach issues, having them understand that can also help that conversation with their provider of like, well, you put me on this and it didn't work very well, and so then we changed the dose and we switched to this, and I have my medical card and this is what I'm doing. And so, you know, we would love for people to get to that place where they could go to their provider and their provider actually be able to look at their chart and say, okay, this is how you've been taking it. This is what you've been doing. Let's change this up so that we can make this work best for you.
Man, I really want to connect with you guys again in like 10 years and just be able to see. So remember when we were talking about this, when you guys first released your book? Look where we're now.
I know. I'm so excited for that. I am just so, both of us are so hopeful that this will not only help people, but inspire people to maybe look into something that they never even thought could work for them because they thought it was just a fun time party drug. And that this is a natural, from the earth substance that can truly make a difference. And like Matt said earlier, this is not a panacea. We are not claiming that this will work the same way for every person on the planet. There have been some people that we have spoken with that have said, it didn't matter how much I took or what type, I felt like garbage afterwards. And we're now learning that there's people that their endocannabinoid system is so perfectly tuned, they don't need any extra.
No way, really?
And so they don't need it. And so when they take it, their body's like, well, I have this excess. What should I do with it?
Oh, man.
And so so we're not saying it's for every single person on the planet, but for the majority of people, they find relief for very serious issues that they're having. And we want those people to have access to the medication that they need so that they can feel better and have a better quality of life. Because that's like we said, that's all that it is in the end, is quality of life. But even like Matt was talking about, that there are certain patient populations where we don't medically have enough research. And that is another reason it's so important to get it off of Schedule 1, is so that we can do these research studies where we can tell people, no, this is exactly how it, affects a general population in pregnancy or in infants. But even the research that we do have, it's very positive. It's very positive. And so we're hoping that we can continue that type of research so that we can have exact guidelines to give to people so that they don't feel so experimented upon by themselves, like, well, it's another experiment today, not sure how it's going to end. But don't be discouraged. you know, keep fighting. Oh, babe, you're muted.
I keep doing that. Sorry, I was going to say to that, I feel that that's one of the reasons that providers have such a difficult time accepting it, is that they're so used to going, here's 25 milligrams of metoprolol for your blood pressure. If that doesn't work, we'll go up by this amount exactly. Whereas, you know, with cannabis, if you're looking at dry flower, you don't have a milligram percentage or things like that. And so it's not only the opposite of what they've been doing basically, but it's so far out of their comfort zone. And so, you know, it's a loss of control, and I feel, and I think that kind of panics them, because if you know, your patient is taking these things that you don't have control over, what else are they doing? And I feel like it's the lack of trust thing, you know, but there needs to be trust in both directions for this relationship to work. And, you know, I have to trust that you are a intelligent enough individual to follow, you know, basic directions to, you know, and you're not going to do these things that are going to be detrimental to yourself. And by the same token, you as a patient have to trust that I as a provider have your best interests at heart. I'm not trying to, you know, profit from COVID like the president says, or things like that, you know.
I think too, from what Matt was saying, is that for people that do have negative experiences, why? How did you get to that place? Was it the dose you took? Was it the strain you took? But that there are really easy, simple things that if you did take too much, that you can reverse it. It's super straightforward and simple. If you had too much THC, you just take more CBD, and it will help bring that down. So that people, if they haven't used in a long time, or it's something that they've never tried, don't be afraid. Take it low and slow, and there are ways to help you. If you do have a side effect that you're like, I hate this, I don't like this, that can help bring you back out of that situation too. So don't be afraid. Talk to people, ask people questions. And like I said, if you really truly believe that your provider does not have your best interest at heart for whatever reason, and that doesn't mean that they're bad providers, they just might not be the provider for you.
Could just be a personality difference. Yeah.
Talk to your friends and family. Who do you go to? Who do you see? Who do you trust? Talk to people that have their medical cards and say, hey, who do you go to? Who do you talk to? Because we do want to get to that place where it is an open and easy conversation that is not demonized, does not demonize you as a person for wanting to try this, or that you're a user. We just hope the very best from this, and we wrote this because we love you guys. We love people. We love our patients, and we realized how lacking providers are in general of basic knowledge, and not because it's their own fault. It's because the institutions that teach us don't include it in their curriculum, and that's something that we are going to try to fight for as well, is getting that added into curriculums.
To be fair on that, generally medical curriculums run about 10 years behind research at the minimum. So, you know, part of it is the stigma that's been held against it, but part of it is that we're not doing any research right now, really. You know, I mean, we are, but it's not to the level that it needs to be. And so for them to make those changes in the medical textbooks, you know, we have to have something else change.
And be patient. Be patient with your providers too. You know, try to talk to them, but be patient and realize that it's really hard when you know a lot about something and you care a lot about something, for someone to bring something up and you have to say, I don't know anything about that. Or the stuff I do know is just stuff that I've heard from, you know, Joe Schmo on the street. So be patient.
Yeah.
As well.
Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I feel like I could easily talk to you guys forever. You're just full of so much knowledge, and it feels like a very safe conversation. I don't feel like I'm intimidated or anything. I would love to, before I upload this, be able to give people where they can kind of follow you guys on, other than getting the book. Please get the book. If there, I know I have a lot of I have a lot of readers in New Mexico, so definitely when I post this, I would love to be able to kind of put some of their information. So if there's anyone in the area that wishes to connect with you guys, that's an option. Or if not, they can just kind of follow up with whatever you guys continue to bring out to the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Yeah. I know I'm pretty active on Twitter. I do a lot of tweets about, current cannabis issues, new studies, things that are going before legislatures and things like that. So you can follow me at...
we can send you, our Twitter accounts, our email addresses, if anybody has any specific questions that they want asked.
Yay.
Also, I was going to let you know, Andrew, too, that if you would like some of these, we have postcards that people can put in their clinics or give their patients or their friends that just talks a little bit about the book itself, and we can send those to you as well if you would like some.
I actually would. There's a few places where I know that I can actually put them here in Colorado, and it'd be great.
Perfect.
That'd be fabulous.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I am so grateful that we got to meet you. What a wonderful conversation. I hope we've been helpful. But don't give up. We have a big fight ahead of us, but we're in this together. And, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to contact us. We would love to talk with you. Providers, especially if you have questions, please let us know so we can help you help your patients.
Well, thank you guys so much. I hope you have an incredible rest of your day and week. And I will reach out via email so we can talk more about astrology and kind of put out everything so that people can connect with you guys.
Absolutely.
Bye, Elizabeth.
Thank you so
Bye,
much,
Matt.
Andrea.
Thank you guys
Nice
so
to meet
much.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Blessings.